All right, so as I discussed just a few minutes ago, this doesn't cut it. I have minimum requirements. I need some images. Told you to go ahead and start looking for those images. Let's say that I went ahead and downloaded a bunch of copyright-free images to look at and peruse through, and I was ready to go on this. I'm running Windows 10 on here, so I can actually increase the size of my icons a little bit. Let's go ahead and do that so we can get a better look. So as you continue on this, especially after we cover curves in Photoshop, you're going to start to be able to see when something's been heavily edited in post-production as compared to something that hasn't. For example, this looks like it has had a filter applied to make it look older, rather than it actually being an older image. I find it, I suppose it's possible it could be an older scan. We'd have to look up South Pole and, you know, what was going on at this street at this time to really find out how old it is. But a couple of heads up. Notice a few things. We've got a website with the standard www.whatever.com. So that indicates that this is not in the 90s because they would have put the HTTP at the beginning of that. We do have Kodak, however, so we know that this is not of recent times, since Kodak is mostly in chemistry again these days. I think they're under another title. They don't quite make the cameras like they used to. And we see that we have like a Yahoo. So I'm guessing we're in... what would you guys say? I want to say that maybe 2006 at the earliest, 2012 at the latest, because this after the iPhone came out, you know, Kodak was pretty much done for as they went through. But we're also seeing Virgin Mobile, so this is definitely like pre-iPhone going in. So this gives you an idea. It probably wouldn't look like this. Cameras were decent enough at the time that this was most likely edited fairly heavily. So you can work on that. I'm coming off the screen. Let me resize that. You can look at cues like that to give you some ideas of what it would look like. But it's a little bit trickier on some of these where you go, well, what's this change? As the semester progresses, I'll show you more tools where you can start to figure out what's happening. For now, though, we're not too concerned with this. I don't mind if you take something that's been pre-photoshopped as you go in. I would prefer, if possible, you do your own stuff from scratch. For example, here's a terrifying Eggman. If you did this from scratch, I'd be super impressed. You know, this is going to take you several hours to go through, and I know you guys don't have a lot of time to focus on it, and I've already been talking for what seems like forever in this particular assignment. So, but maybe you have something from last semester you want to bring out. That'd be pretty awesome. They did some spatial blurring and all that stuff going in here too. So, you know, do with this as you will. I'm just looking at the overall work. Keep in mind, I'm going to tell you about composition and things when we grade these. I'm going to make little videos to talk about this sort of stuff. But that's kind of the last 10 points that I was talking about earlier. Unless I specifically told you what kind of composition to use or which ones are off limits, those aren't part of the 90 points that you need to get an A. All right, but something that you should keep in mind if you do want to get that 100%, you want all that stuff, is to start taking a look at where lighting is. So notice that the shadow on this beautiful animal is being cast over on the right, and the shadow on what I assume is a lovely lady here is being cast over on the left. So we have an idea that the lighting is coming from two different directions. So if you wanted to use these together and make them feel realistic, you'd probably want these to be flipped over, and I could do a temporary horizontal flip. Now these two things could potentially be used in the same image without too much of a problem. So I'm probably going to snag these two guys actually, just so that we can start grabbing some stuff. That could be fun, couldn't it? Just having the person. Well, let's start getting a few of these off in Photoshop. So we've got this guy and this lady. We'll pop these two right into Photoshop, but I'm going to move them not inside the window here, the workspace that I've already created. I have the tab set up at the moment. I'm going to move them up to the tab area. Notice the whole thing changes. I've got like this tiny icon that says copy instead of just the plus. That means that it will actually pop it over as their own image, and I can import them individually. We have not covered smart objects or smart layers yet. So if you start getting, let's see if I can to do that. If I drop it in from one to another, it's just a standard image. There's nothing too amazing going on. If I were to drop it in, I think I left this on. Correct me if I'm wrong. If I drop it straight in, it will notice this placement is occurring. If I press enter on this, I did both of them, my bad. If I press enter on this, let me get rid of the spare one and save it in. Notice there's something else going on. It automatically resized it. That's potentially a problem. In this case, it's smart object, so it's not really an issue. But notice it's got this little smart object icon. That's what this little square going on is. If you right-click on a smart object's, not on the thumbnail, sorry, on the layer itself, you'll have an option to we're already a smart object. We don't want to convert. We have an option to rasterize the layer. If we go to our standard layer here and right-click on it, notice that we don't have a rasterized layer. It's ghosted out. We can convert it to smart object, although we're going to cover that in a later assignment, what's going on. And with all that, if you know smart objects well, feel free to use them. I'm not going to stop you on it. If you haven't covered smart objects yet, we're going to cover that later. So for now, what you can do is just rasterize these layers and they'll pop them in. Or what you can do, notice that this one is substantially smaller though, and I'm not getting those pixels back. What you can do instead is open it separately so that you've got them in different tabs or different windows if you have this set up. Get your move tool, that's V on your keyboard, grab the image, hold it over your tab, plop it in, and there you have it. Everything's set. Another easier way to do that if you have a whole bunch of tabs that are tiny and hard to get to is right-click on your layer, tell it duplicate layer, and you can name this whatever you want, and you can target your individual, either make a new file together or target a file that you have open in here. Notice that Greenberg Eric 02 is available. I can click right on that and boom. When I come back over here, I have something called background copy, and sure enough, it's the same kind of layer. Pretty cool. So let's go ahead and do it that way. I'll go ahead and right click and I will duplicate layer and I will target my first file there. So I don't need those two images anymore. So this brings up a question though of blending things together. So we'll cover that in just a minute, how we're going to cut these things out. Notice too that this is huge. Like, how am I going to mask this kind of stuff? Well, at that point, it may be a good idea to actually do your masking on the image prior to bringing it over. So for example, let me grab one of my go-to and absolute favorite images for these assignments. This is not just any old snail. This is a snail that I use to demonstrate all kinds of stuff. So he's kind of a scientific snail. So let's say that I have already done a mask on this snail. So I'm going to go ahead and make a quick duplicate of the layer. And I'm just going to make the cheesiest, worst mask on the planet here, guys. You're not even going to believe how bad this is. Look how terrible this mask is. I would look at this and be like, hey, did you think maybe refining your mask would be a better approach? Why do you have your mask like that? So I'm going to hold down the Alt key so the thing that I don't have selected gets masked out when I click the new mask on the layer palette down here on the bottom right. This little white circle in the black square. Boom. Did that wrong. I got that wrong. Sorry. That masks out what you have selected. I'm just going to click on the mask and Control-I to invert it. Sorry about that. So I've got this guy. So if I right-click on this layer and go to duplicate layer, what do you think is going to happen? Duplicate layer. And I send it over back to Greenberg Eric. I tell it OK. I pop up into Greenberg Eric. Oh, good news, everyone. The mask went with it. Sure, it's so oversized that I can't see anything. Hello, snail. Let's look you right in the eye. There we go. So we've got this snail going on, but the mask is set. So one thing you can do is actually pre-mask these images prior to sending them over. And I think that that's a great idea for a lot of cases because you can actually save your images as a PSD with the mask. And then later on in the semester, if you want to use that, you don't have to recreate the wheel. You've got everything set, and so you can go in. Now, here's a tip that I got a while back that I really liked. You can actually get paid in post-production just to mask stuff. This is a time-intensive thing, and if people are splitting up the work, you're going to want to have those masks done really quickly. So someone does all the photography, and someone does the masking, somebody does the composite, somebody does the text. You know, you can just streamline this. So what you want to do when you're working on these is ask them, what kind of background are you going on? Is it going to be light? Is it going to be dark? Is it going to be in between? And if they don't know, bill them for all of them, because if it's a light image on a dark image, you're going to have to charge them more. It's going to take you more time to work that out. And if it's a dark image on a light image, you're going to want to charge them more on that as well. And if it's on a gray, it gets tricky, maybe charge it for both. Charge them for all three if they don't know, because your time is valuable. It's what you're charging for. So what do I mean by that? That was a lot of stuff that I just said for no apparent reason. I'm going to go ahead and create a solid color. I'm going to make one white. I'm going to go ahead and create a solid color. And I'm going to make this one black. And I know it's pure black because I've got zeros all down the line on here. I'm ignoring the CMYK. And I'm going to create a mid-tone gray. And I'm doing this just by clicking the adjustment layer icon. In older videos you'll find online, sometimes referred to as the black-white icon. I'm going to tell it solid color. And for this one, where's that middle gray? Well, when brightness is 50% and you have no hue or saturation, that will be middle gray. And we can see right away, we have RG and B of 128, which we know now is between the 0 and the 255. So, boop, that's got to be pure gray. Bam. So as we're masking this, we'd want to check it across the board. And if you remember from the forever ago when I was covering the smart masks, I'm sorry, when I was covering the layer masks, selected masks, the refinement, you have the option to look at these with different kinds of backgrounds, such as on white, on black, and I guess they don't have on gray. Well, that's unfortunate. So you have those kinds of options. So you could, I'm going to press escape on my keyboard to get out of that workspace. So you can do this, and it will allow you to mask it better. So let's go ahead and mask some things. And then we'll start to assemble it. I'll see you next video.